So where does it start? I mean, whether it's fixing it in the short term or the long term, because this
Well,
team
duh.
is the NFL's embodiment of the definition of insanity. It does the same thing over and over every year, expecting a different result. Where does it start with Dallas in terms of fixing it?
Oh, that's a deep question. And here's why it's a deep question. Now, let's tell the truth. Mike McCarthy got Kellen Moore fired. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think this might be my last year. I want to call the plays if it's going to be my last year. I want to go out on my terms if it's going to be my last year. So you got the Mike McCarthy issue. Like, it hasn't really been about the regular season for the Cowboys this year. It's always been about what do you do in the playoffs. So I don't really think Jerry Jones cares how they get into the playoffs, wild card, whatever, as long as we get in and we get to the NFC Championship game. However you get there, I don't care. Just get there. I need to see progress. And so you ask yourself, if there's not progress, what's going to happen? And it might be that Mike McCarthy gets fired. The only problem with that is if they don't have the season that you expect them to have and you fire Mike McCarthy, well, who's the next coach? Well, all of us who cover the team closely would say it seems to be a no-brainer. Dan Quinn would be the next coach. But I'm telling you, if you don't have the season that you thought you were supposed to have, then Dan Quinn is probably part of some of that bad play. So can you sell him as the head coach? Now, it is Jerry Jones, so, at some point, he don't really care about whether I can sell him because I can sell anything to anybody. And then the final part of that question, Doug, is, okay, whatever you do with the head coach, what do you do with the quarterback? Because he's now in his ninth, he'll be going into his ninth year.
Okay? He is who he is.
History says if you ain't done it by now, you're not going to do it. But I'm telling y'all, and I tell people this all the time, and it's you as I don't know, you still rep the Saints?
No, that's a long story. I rep New Orleans, but not the Saints. So go ahead, have at
it. So this my point is, you can say get rid of Dak Prescott. You can be like, I'm done with Dak Prescott. Screw him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I got no problem with that if you want to say that. The problem is when you get off and you start on the quarterback journey, you can be like the Cowboys who go from Tony Romo to Dak Prescott. You can be, Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. You can be Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Or what's behind door number 2? You could be them Miami Dolphins that went about 30 years till they find Tua, and they hope that he don't get a concussion, or they may be back on that journey. You could be the Jets. They ain't had one since Broadway Joe. You could be the Browns. They ain't had one since Otto Graham. You could be the Lions. Jared Goff ain't really in that thing. He's serviceable. He's solid. But what I'm saying is, and it don't matter, Doug, whether you take him at the first pick of the draft, there's no guarantee once you get on that journey how long you're going to be on that journey.
They took one at 3, and that's the last pick of the draft that hit. Okay, so you said love the one you with. I see where you're going with this. Sounds like you're one of those people that, like, you don't miss what you have until it's gone. You better appreciate what you have in Dak Prescott because you don't want to know how the other side lives. Huh? That's what all your exes say?
That's what all my exes say.
But see, I was gonna hit you with the I could do bad all by myself though. You know what I'm saying? Like if this is what we're gonna get, says Cowboys fans, and you know what, man? Like, let's just try something new for the sake of change's sake, if nothing else. Because my read on Dak Prescott, I love your general read on I said Dak, who he is. I love to know who you think, having watched his whole career and having watched his predecessors in Dallas. So you got a lot of comps just in terms of the QBs that wear the star on their helmet. Who is Dak Prescott? I maintain that he's not a guy that will be the reason you lose games or the reason you don't win, but he also is not going to be the reason that you do win, which goes back to the Cowboys beating up on bad teams but getting beat up by good teams, which makes them collectively average. Both Dak is a microcosm of the team. Like he's above average. He's good, but he's not going to be the guy that carries you where you got to go. He'll be more along for the ride. He's not going to be baggage, but he's along for the ride.
Yeah, I can't really argue with you right now because I think he's regressed in the last year and a half. Like I thought he was on an ascent 2 years ago. but I didn't see it last year. And the start of this year has been wonky, which is my new favorite word. Just because there are moments where he looks good, there's moments where he looks confused. He doesn't look confident the way I've seen him look in the past. Meaning, I know where I'm going with the ball, boom, 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 and I'm very decisive with it. Like, they haven't taken very many deep shots. I think he's trying to fit into Mike McCarthy's offense, and it's just, I can't. I'm not sure if people put me on the Dak defender part of the conversation, but it's hard for me to ride for him like I used to, just because I haven't seen it in a minute. And, in the NFL, it doesn't take long, because what's the famous thing? NFL stands for not for long. And so you only have so many years not to get it done and look like you're regressing before folks decide you are regressing and it's time to move on. So
because they got to address his contract. They got to address his contract like this offseason, correct?
Yeah, he got Ty France, the agent, he did the damn thing on the contract. They got no trade, okay. You can't franchise me, okay. So that means you got to come to me. You got to deal with me. And all these quarterbacks, the money. You can say, well, Dak is not Joe Burrow, so he doesn't need $52 million. Okay, fine. I'll take 4 years and $47 million. I'm good, since I've already got 4 years and $40 million in the bank. And the question is, do you want to invest that in a guy who hadn't proved he can take you over the hump? Because what'll happen is we're going to be in year 9, and you've got 2 playoff wins. And, that's the same as Tony Romo, but this is Dallas. We judge people based on Troy Aikman, Roger Staubach. You need 2 rings, you need 3 rings. And so he's got no rings and nothing close. And so, and you ask yourself, do we need to pay somebody $150 million when the odds and the history says at this age, they're not going to get it done?
Right. Because that's you brought up the person I was going to ask you about. Like, it feels very similar to his predecessor. Maybe it's a tradition unlike any other in Dallas, where it's like, how much of it is it on the quarterback? Well, he's doing more with less, he's underrated. He's actually underrated. A lot of people say he's overrated, but the truth is he's underrated if you peel back the layers of it. That was the conversation around Tony Romo and how much Romo had to overcome and Romo had to carry. But regardless, they never got where they thought they could go with those talented Cowboys teams. How similar and how different is Dak Prescott's arc? I mean, one was undrafted, took over for Drew Bledsoe. The other one was a 4th-round pick, took over for Tony Romo. So neither of them came through the front door, if you will. And both of them have been polarizing. How similar and how different are their career arcs?
At the end of the day, the way it's going, their career arcs are going to be very similar. It's really good quarterbacks who couldn't quite get it done. And, the weird thing is, like the Cowboys have this stretch of 28 years without having been to the NFC Championship game, where everybody else in the NFC has been there at least twice, except for Washington and Detroit. And when we say, just talking straight football, I mentioned Washington and Detroit. You say those are 2 of the worst teams over the last 40 years in the NFL. So I get why they haven't been. The problem with Dallas is, and it did this for Romo and it did this for Dak, is they should have been either Super Bowl or NFC Championship bound in 07, 14, and 16. They were clearly the best team in the NFC those years and somehow managed to snatch defeat from victory. And so they didn't get it done, and that's why we got this long stretch. And so Dak is a lot more loved in the locker room than Romo was. Romo is a good dude. He really is, but he's an aloof dude. And so he didn't really fit in with his teammates. Dak fits in with everybody. Dak like country music. He like hip hop. He can hang out with the white guys. He can hang out with the brothers. He can hang out with the high draft picks. He can hang out with the practice squad dudes. Romo hung out with the head coach and Jason Witten. That's it for the most part.
Right.
And that's no shade. That's just what it is. That's who your crowd is. So Dak is a lot more beloved. And I tell people that, and people can sniff and go, I don't know. When Tony Romo was just started for 9 years and lost his job, you tell me who you saw say, that is wrong to give that man's job to a rookie. I'll wait, because ain't nobody say that. One, his BFF, Jason Garrett, gave his job away. And his other BFF, Jason Witten, was like, dog, I wish I could say something, but I can't. Because we on a roll right now. So I think Dak has always been a better leader. He's been more beloved in the locker room. But at the end of the day, they both got 2 playoff wins, none of which was the biggest game that they could, And so they're both going to have all the passing records by the time their careers are over. They're both really good. But in Dallas, unlike New Orleans, where y'all still pining for Archie Manning, in Dallas, where it's about Super Bowls, it don't cut it here.
So okay, listen, I told you I don't rep the Saints, I rep New Orleans, and I could tell you the story. But what you can't do as somebody who just, like, as you said, has gone 30 years without an appearance in the NFC Championship game, what you can't do is slander a team that has won the Super Bowl in the interim, okay? Because the Saints, under a guy named Drew Brees, okay, Texas's own Drew Brees, did actually win a Super Bowl. See, now you bringing out the New Orleans in me. Because, I quit that narcotic known as the New Orleans Saints back in 1993 when for the second consecutive season, they blew a home playoff win. See, I'm too young to remember the Aints. I didn't wear bags on my head. Right. That was my parents and my grandparents. But I came up in the Who Dat. I came up as a Who Dat, as Who Dats and Cha-Ching and the late 80s, early 90s, the Jim Mora, Jim Finks days, Bobby Hebert, John Fourcade. That was the team I grew up rooting for until Clark High School's own Michael Haynes and the Atlanta Falcons came into the Superdome and won a 1992 playoff game after the Saints won their first division title in team history in 1991, having only made the playoffs for the first time and been a winning team for the first time in 1987, followed by 1992 when they went 12-4, had a home playoff game to Randall Cunningham and the Philadelphia Eagles, led 20-3 at halftime, Jean-Jacques, led 20-3 at halftime. The final score was 36-20. Wow. So it was in that moment, okay? It was in that moment. And this is kind of full circle. I don't know if I ever told you this. Circa 1991, I remember watching, this was old school Thursday. I feel like it was a Thursday night, old school Thursday night football, like on TNT or something. All right. I remember watching Michael Irvin give the guy that we're going to talk about in a minute, who you know all about, or you writing a book about, or you wrote a book about. I read the excerpt. Won't get into that. I remember watching Michael Irvin give Deion Sanders the business, slant route after slant route in primetime television. And I'm like, yo, I'm feeling this Cowboys team. Like, they got Emmett in 90. I got Troy Aikman's football car when they took him number 1 out of UCLA. I'm like, Irvin is. I like his swagger. I was like, I'm Jimmy Johnson. I'm like, okay, let me get with the Cowboys. They went 11-5 in 1991. Of course, 92, 93 to win the Super Bowl. You know the whole history. So interestingly enough, I would say I was because I became a Cowboys fan in my teenage years. I actually rooted for the Cowboys. I stopped rooting for anybody because you and I, being OG journalists that we are, when I got into the business, I couldn't root for anybody. I couldn't be a fan. I couldn't show up in a locker room in an Aikman jersey or Marino jersey or Bledsoe jersey. Like how that look, Right. But I was actually a Cowboys fan growing up. So that's the story. So when you say, do I rep the Saints? No, but I am about facts, and the Saints have been far more successful in recent years than the Dallas Cowboys have. That's how we got on that. But in terms of the future of this franchise, okay? Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.